say, you know what, Arnie, have you been on for 3 years, or you finishing up 2 years there? I'm trying to remember when you got appointed.
Opal was on, and then he wanted to get off.
Okay.
So I think it's
I can't remember when Al stepped down. I thought that was last term.
Calling user, last two digits 81. If you could identify yourself for the committee, please.
Eric Vogel.
All right, thank you.
Dom, I'm going to look to you. I'm guessing we have a quorum of individuals online as well, right? Okay. Sure. Okay. Thanks, Cindy. All right. Seeing as it's 3:02, let's call the August 31st meeting of the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee to order. Public comment. We did not have anybody signed up to speak under
this meeting is being recorded.
On the agenda, let's move on to number 3, which is approval of the August 3rd, 2021 committee minutes. What is the motion by Supervisor Drabeck and second by Supervisor Schley to approve the minutes? Is there any discussion?
Yes, actually, this is Supervisor Guild.
Go ahead, Supervisor Guild.
On the first part, right under call to order, after the recommendation to make Fifrick the chair pro tempore, it says called to order by Vice Chair Guild at 3 p.m. I was not present at that time. I think that needs to be removed from the final minutes.
Okay. I think that's just a clerical correction. I don't think there needs to be an amended motion or anything. So Supervisor Guild will get that fixed up to have a more accurate record of the minutes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 4, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings, review possible actions and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration, county zoning changes in 1 through 3. Just a reminder to those in attendance here and those online, first of all, the people in attendance, please mute your phones. Also for the people joining us online, if you could please mute yourselves when others are speaking, or when you are not speaking, I should say. That would be great to eliminate as much background noise as possible. The Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in public hearing on the location, plan, specifications, and purpose of the following projects. 1, Tim Freeland on behalf of Carl Schilling, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Knowlton. 2, Daniel and Anna Judd, Urban Residential to Low Density Residential, Town of Knowlton. And 3, Tim Freeland on behalf of George Harvanek, General Agriculture to Rural Estate and Rural Estate to Rural Residential, the Town of Gunther. Very quickly here, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee. I myself am Jake Langenhan, the chair of the Environmental Resources Committee. With us through joining us digitally is Sarah Guild, who is the vice chair of the Environmental Resources Committee. Also, county board supervisors Bill Conway, Rick Seefeld, Al Drabeck, Arnie Schley, Dave Overbeck. We also have Marilyn Ben, who's our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association rep, and Eric Vogel, who is our Farm Service Agency rep. Also present from staff are Paul Daigle, our county conservationist, Lori Mimiskins, our county conservation planning and zoning director, Dominic Swangstu, our zoning administrator, and Cindy Krager, our administrative coordinator. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, but must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in favor of those first in favor, second opposed, and third as interest may appear. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements and on the overall length of the hearing to promote orderly discussion. Anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has had all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are recommendations to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Contact staff for more information regarding the county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 4A1, Tim Freeland on behalf of Carl Schilling, General Agricultural to Real Estate, Town of Knowlton. And we will begin with our staff report, which will be given by Dominic Swangstu.
Chair Langenhoff, this is Andy Lynch. If I could just get in here for a minute. We had a call-in user. Call-in user last two digits 06. If you could identify yourself, please.
Marilyn Band.
Thank you, Supervisor. Good.
We're good to go then?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think Dom's got things ready for us. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
All right. So thank you, Chairman. So as previously stated, this is a rezone petition to rezone lands from general agricultural to rural estate in the town of Knowlton. The property in question is located on the northern portion of the town itself, as shown in the plat map. The rezone petition. Moving down to the existing zoning district map, adjacent uses are zoned general agricultural, shown in white, yet there are some parcels zoned rural residential and low-density residential within close proximity. The total area proposed to be rezoned is 19.22 acres. Moving down to the existing land use line cover map, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as cropland, woodland, vacant, and single-family residential land uses in the town's comprehensive plan, existing land use land cover map. Adjacent land uses are comprised of similar land uses, including single-family residential and other agricultural and woodland uses. I appear to be getting a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure if someone's... Marilyn, would you mind please muting your phone if possible, or WebEx?
I think I am muted.
Okay.
I took care of that, Dom.
All right, thank you. All right, so back to the staff report. The town's comprehensive plan future land use map. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as cropland land uses in the future land use map. Adjacent lands are comprised of single-family residential, cropland, and railroad land uses. Farmland preservation, the area was not designated as a farmland preservation area within the farmland preservation plan. Additionally, the town of Knowlton does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. Therefore, there are no parcels within the town that are zoned farm pres. Significant parcel limitations or natural features. There are some DNR mapped wetlands located on the parcel as shown on the screen. There is also what appears to be an intermittent stream that is located on the western portion of the lot. The current navigability of the stream has not been determined. Therefore, we cannot definitively say if the shoreline regulations apply to this area or not. Next is the preliminary certified survey map as shown below. Lot 1, and these are the proposed lots after the rezone is approved, or if and when it is approved. The existing parcel encompasses both of these proposed lots, again around 19 acres in size. Aerial photo. Going down to an aerial photo of the adjacent parcels. Town recommendation. On August 9th, the town of Knowlton did recommend approval of the rezone in question with no additional comments or concerns. And similarly to the last ERC meeting, I think I'm just going to skip over the staff comments regarding ERC conclusions of law. The information and materials were included in the packet, but if the committee has any questions, feel free to let me know. Moving down to the staff recommendations, it appears the rezone meets all of the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. If approved, the town of Knowlton should update their comprehensive plan to reflect the proposed rezone. The future and existing land use maps should also reflect the rezone in question. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact and conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all of the rezone criteria and standards. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the ERC recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dom? Seeing and hearing none. Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to the next part for public discussion. So anyone in favor of the request, joining us via WebEx or in person here, if you could come forward or unmute yourself and identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone? I'll call one more time after this. Unmute yourself over WebEx or come forward in person. Oh, okay. I believe we have a microphone up there.
Carl Schilling, and of course, we're in favor of the petition because we proposed it and we just want to split this lot. Our son and ourselves bought it together, and we just want to split it off so in case something happens to us, he doesn't lose his hunting land. So that's all.
Okay. Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And your address, please.
149295 Bird Lane,
Thank you.
Mosinee, Wisconsin.
Yep. I'm guessing the things that you said prior to swearing in, you'd like to communicate to the committee as well, right? Yeah.
Did you want me to say it again?
No, I think I think we understand. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Well, are there any questions for? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? All right, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time, unmute yourself over WebEx or come forward. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Hearing and seeing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak as interested? Last time. All right. If no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on Tim Freeland on behalf of Carl Schilling, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Knowlton, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Chair Longenhan?
Go ahead, Supervisor Guild.
I would make a motion to approve the request, and of course now my computer froze, so I can't read it in. Give me a second here. To approve for recommendation to the county board the request from Tim Freeland on behalf of Charles Schilling to transfer general ag to rural estate in the town of Knowlton based on the findings in the staff report and the conclusions of law.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabek. Motion to approve the rezone and accept the findings and facts and conclusion of law provided by staff and has been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, 4A2, Daniel and Anna Judd, urban residential to low density residential, town of Knowlton.
Alrighty. So as previously stated, this is a rezone petition in the town of Knowlton to rezone lands from urban residential to low density residential.
1 second, Dom, is
Hello?
the mic on?
Hello?
Okay.
Is that better? Sorry, I'll move it a little closer to my
Thank you.
mouth here. All right. So as you can see here, the parcel is located just along Dubay Drive in the town of Knowlton. Existing zoning district map. Adjacent parcels are zoned urban residential and low density residential. There are some parcels zoned rural estate and conservancy and recreation within close proximity. The parcel in question is 2.463 acres in size. Moving down to the existing generalized land use land cover map provided in the town of Knowlton comprehensive plan. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown as partially as woodland and vacant land in the town's comprehensive plan. Whereas in the town's future land use map, the area in question is shown as single-family residential and as well as some partial floodplain in their future land use map. From and preservation plan, the area was not, or this parcel was not designated as a from and preservation area in the plan, and similar to the previous rezone, the town of Knowlton does not participate in the from and preservation zoning program. Significant parcel limitations or natural features. The area is proposed to be rezoned does have some DNR mapped wetlands, as well as some FEMA mapped floodplain areas. Additionally, there is I guess the entire parcel is covered within the shoreline overlay from Lake Dubay. It is also important to note that the property owners did obtain a letter of map amendments which removed additional lands from the regulatory floodplain and primarily around the single-family home that is currently on site. And you'll see it a little better in the aerial photos. Moving down to the existing survey, this parcel is shown as Lot 4, again 2.463 acres in size. An aerial photo, this is the home I was speaking of before. Town recommendation, the town of Knowlton did recommend approval to the ERC on August 9th with no additional comments or concerns. Again, I'll skip past the staff comments regarding the ERC conclusions of law. All of the information and materials were included in the packet. So based on the information provided above, the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all of the rezone criteria and standards. Therefore, CPT staff recommend that the ERC recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. And that concludes the staff report.
Any questions for Dom? Hearing none. Thank you, Dom.
Supervisor Guild.
Oh, go ahead, Supervisor Guild.
Sorry about that. I do have a question about, looking at the map that shows all of the areas zonings and noticing that, it's basically, they're looking to have it zoned the same as what is across the street, essentially. And you had that comment at the end about updating the rezone for all of it. I'm just curious to know what are we approving? I mean, aside from why they want to do this, just in general, why is it that one side was all urban and the other side was low density, and now we're looking to kind of cross the street with the zoning? What are we actually doing here, if much of anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially, I did pull up the map here on the screen. If I wish I had a larger or better zoomed out or zoomed in aerial of the zoning district map that shows this whole Lake Dubay Peninsula. But essentially, as you can see on the map, there are two parcels that were previously approved by the ERC that rezoned lands from low-density residential to rural estate, shown in orange. And there are some other parcels within close proximity that did kind of flip-flop when it comes to the residential zoning district it was designated as. So with this rezone, it would essentially just rezone this parcel in question to I guess a less dense zoning district. It would allow for additional uses to be permitted on site, but the core of the classification or the core intent behind it is to keep it residential. We did work with the property owners and did indicate to them that based on their acreage, they could potentially petition to rezone to rural residential, which has a 2-acre minimum. But they had indicated that given the close proximity as well as the contiguous nature of both of these zoning districts, it would be more appropriate and more feasible to go down the route of rezoning to a low-density residential versus a rural estate, given there aren't any rural estate zoning or rural residential zoning districts within close proximity. So my assumption based on where and why these parcels were zoned the way that they are is primarily if you look at the northern portion of the Lake Dubay, the vast majority of these parcels are under 1 acre. And those were likely existing lots that were developed in the past, could be 50, 60 years ago. And then the parcel in question, as well as the adjacent parcels, it looks like there's probably 3 or 4 of them. Those are unusually large for this area. So essentially, this change in classification wouldn't affect, I guess, the residential classification of the parcel. It would just allow for some other more large space uses to be to actually take place on site. Again, I don't foresee any issues with this rezone just going to another zoning classification. And again, it's not as, let's say, severe or different than going to, let's say, a rural residential zoning district.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification there.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dom. Now let's move on to public discussion. Anyone in favor of the request? Those joining us online, please unmute yourselves, or those in person, please come forward at this time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the request, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time after this. Last call, anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Okay, hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time.
Hi, I tried to talk during the in favor, but it wasn't letting me, and I remembered I had to hit *6 to unmute myself.
Sure, we can hear you now. Could you
This is Anna.
Could you please state your name and address?
Yep, it's Anna Judd, 202555 Dubay Drive.
Do you sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, we obviously were petitioning to rezone. Honestly, mainly just to keep some chickens. We actually thought that we could because a lot of the people across the street have had them and even down the road. And so when we applied for a building permit, we were told we would have to, a building permit for a deck, sorry, for a separate thing. So we would have to rezone. So that's really the main thing that we were hoping for.
Okay, any questions? All right. Thank you. Thank you for testifying.
Yep.
Anybody else wishing to, speak in favor, and I guess I'll call again. Anybody wishing to speak against? Last call. All right. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Last call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Okay, hearing none, I am now declaring the public hearing for Daniel and Anna Judd, urban residential to low density Residential, Town of Knowlton is now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application and apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. What is the pleasure of the committee? Supervisor Seefeld.
Yeah, it's on. Okay, I would make a motion to the petition of Daniel and Anna Judd to amend the county zoning ordinance rezone from urban residential to low-density residential in the town of Knowlton and to pass the conclusion of law.
A motion to approve the rezone, correct? Yep.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second? Supervisor Schley with the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, 4A3, Tim Freeland on behalf of George Harvanek, General Agricultural to Rural Estate and Rural Estate to Rural Residential, Town of Gunther.
All right. So beginning with the staff report here, as previously stated, rezone land in the town of Gunther. And as shown in the public hearing notice, this is kind of a twofer. Rezone at one existing parent parcel, but there are some reconfigurations of a smaller residential parcel, and we can get into that moving down in the staff report. But the existing zoning districts are general ag and rural estate, and then the proposed are rural estate and rural residential. Existing zoning district map, adjacent parcels are zoned general agricultural, shown in white, with a few rural estate parcels and rural residential parcels within close proximity. As shown here, the parcel proposed to be rezoned to, or I guess portions of land proposed to be rezoned to RE. The final parcel will be approximately 7.4 acres, and then the area proposed to be rezoned to RR is approximately 3.1 acres in size. Existing land use map, the areas proposed to be rezoned are shown as partially single-family residential, woodland, and vacant land uses in the existing land use map. Whereas it's very similar in the future land use map, there are the areas in question are shown as single-family residential, forest, and barren land uses. Farmland Preservation Plan. The area in question was designated as a farmland preservation area in the farmland preservation plan, yet the town of Gunther does not participate in farmland preservation zoning. Therefore, there are no parcels within the town that are zoned farmland pres. Significant parcel limitations or natural features. The areas proposed to be rezoned have very little DNR mapped wetlands. As you can see on the northeastern portion, there's a very small sliver that intersects with it. But the vast majority of both parcels are within the shoreline overlay. And lastly, there are no FEMA mapped floodplain areas. Preliminary certified survey map, as you can see here, as previously indicated, Lot 1, this is going to be rural estate, and then Lot 2 will be rural residential. All right, and this graphic was put together to, I guess, illustrate the rezoning question. As shown, only a portion of that larger lot will be rezoned, given the existing parcel itself, the full length along the road here is currently zoned rural estate. So that area gets going from general ag to rural estate, and then this portion on the southeast is going from rural estate to rural residential. Town recommendation on August 9th, that the Town of Gunther Town Board recommended approval of the rezoning question, and they did not have any additional comments or suggestions. The staff comments regarding the ERC conclusions of law. All of this information and materials were included in the packet. If the committee has any questions on any of the information provided, feel free to let me know. And finally, the staff or CPZ recommendations. So based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all of the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, any questions for Dom? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. All right, we'll move on to public discussion. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the request over WebEx or joining us by phone, please unmute yourself, or anybody joining us in person here, please come forward at this time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the request, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Okay, hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. Hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested on the proposed rezone, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none, I am now declaring that the public hearing on Tim Freeland on behalf of George Harvinick, General Ag to Rural Estate and Rural Estate to Rural Residential, Town of Gunther, is now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. What is the pleasure of the committee?
This is Supervisor Guild.
Yes, Supervisor Guild.
I would like to make a motion to recommend approval of the rezone petition for Tim Freeland on behalf of George Harvinick, requesting transition from general ag to rural estate and rural estate to rural residential in the town of Gunther based on the staff report and the meeting the conclusions of law.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Draybeck.
Conwell, second.
I think Supervisor Draybeck beat you just by a hair of a second there, Supervisor Conway. Just a hair, though. Motion is made in second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on. 4B, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. Town zoning changes pursuant to Wisconsin statute 60.62 sub 3. We have none. Review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. We have none. D, review and possible action. 4D1, Brickyard's final county plat, Town of McMillan.
Yeah, this is the preliminary plat was approved at our last ERC meeting. So this is the final plat coming next. It's the plat of Brickyards, Town of McMillan. Plat requirements, it meets the survey, zoning, environmental, sanitary, and access requirements, as did the preliminary plat. Prior to the submittal of the final plat for approval, a concept plat meeting was held March 15th. The preliminary plat was approved by ERC on August 3rd, and this final plat reflects the designs discussed in the concept plat meeting and the approved preliminary plat. So based on the information provided in the staff report, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee approve the proposed final county plat of the Brickyards. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? If not, it sounds like a motion to approve would be in order. Supervisor Schley.
I make a motion to approve
The final plat.
the
Brickyard's
final plat.
Sure. Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
Supervisor Conwell, second.
Supervisor Conway with the second. Very good. Motion by Schley, second by Conway. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, 4D2, provide a memo from ERC in support of funding the Fenwood Creek watershed through ARPA funds. Suggested draft was provided in your packet for today's meeting. I'm not quite sure who takes the lead on this one. Probably me. So as you all have noted this past, or as we all noted the past couple months, with the Fenwood Creek Watershed Project, that this was a priority for the ERC, specifically in accomplishing some of the goals that have been delegated to us in the strategic plan. We know that there is a pretty hefty cost constraint associated with this project. And when we had discussed it with the executive committee in the past, the executive committee was, primarily concerned about on that cost constraint. The American Rescue Plan Act presents an opportunity for the county to use some of its ARPA allocation towards funding water infrastructure projects. And among the qualified or allowable uses, I should say, there it appears that this Fenwood Creek Watershed Project would fall under the allowable uses. So from where we left off last month, there was some discussion regarding the county and its public engagement process, going out to the community and asking what are the priorities that our residents have to help us guide the county board's use of those ARPA funds, realizing that the ERC would have an opportunity to provide some input during the budgeting process with these ARPA funds. We want to make sure that our a project that presents a lot of opportunity for our group in accomplishing some of those strategic plan goals, that we should try to get some support for it. So the memo that was provided in the packet discusses the total project funding request and then the outcomes that, again, are in our land and water resource management plan, the plans that help guide the work that the county does. So I don't know, are there any questions from the committee on the content of this draft, or anything else that we would like to communicate to leadership regarding the request for ARPA funds? And I myself just want to say at the start of this that I understand that the county has a wide variety of priorities out there, and I think that it would be a disservice to everybody on this group or everybody on this committee if we didn't at least ask to see whether or not there are some potential opportunities for using ARPA funds in the work that we all do here. I think that this is a good step. I think that this is a way to communicate the importance of the work that this group does. And like I said, I think that we should at least start with the ask and see what happens during the budget process, and maybe we see some success. I certainly hope we do. So any comments from the committee?
This is Supervisor Guild.
Go ahead, Supervisor Guild.
I do that it would be a good idea to forward this letter on to the HR Finance and Property Committee. I think it was well written. It did a nice job of very succinctly explaining why we are moving this forward and why it would be a good use. And honestly, even if we don't get the request, because it's a substantial lift, and I know that there were a number of other items that were brought forward in the recent conversations about the ARPA funds, it does raise awareness of what we have identified and what we're trying to do at the CPZ level. And so worst case scenario, we don't get any of this money, but more people know what we're trying to do, and maybe it will generate some other avenues. I mean, hopefully we do get some funding for it, but there are a lot of priorities out there. So either way, I don't think that we can lose by moving this forward. And I cannot currently think of any improvements to the letter as it is currently drafted. So unless other supervisors or even staff have some suggestions, I do think it was brought forward appropriately. So I just wanted to put that out there for consideration.
Thank you, Supervisor Guild. And actually, This would be a good question, I think, for Paul or Lori. What is the county's total ARPA allocation?
So the question was that, what is the allocation? And the total is 26 million, but there's two allocations split by 13 million from my recollection.
Okay. And I guess the next question that I would have, because staff is more familiar with this process than I ever will be, have other committees been going through a similar process like this for projects that they have?
I'm not aware of what other committees are doing thus far. I know we were told at the department head level to prepare requests in terms of staff memos outlining our requests and support for them. So.
Okay. Thank you both. Any other comments from the committee?
Chair Langenheim?
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Guild.
Just in follow-up with your question there, the only one that I know that there's been a request for broadband and other, proposals along those lines. So I would anticipate that there may be something similar to the CIP process where they're going to be doing some ranking. But if we don't have something out there, then this definitely wouldn't make it. And I'm not sure how many other committees are doing it at this level. I do see that the memorandum is written in such a way that it is coming from Chair Langenhahn on behalf of the ERC. I don't know if it would be of benefit to, actually have it signed in any capacity, but at least having it there as the on behalf of, I think, would be sufficient at this point. So I'm willing to, let me see, is this a motionable item on the agenda?
I am being told that it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, yeah. All right, then I would make a motion to forward the provided memo from the ERC to the HR Property and Finance Committee for their consideration when evaluating the use of ARPA fund recommendations.
Motion was made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Seefeld. Any further discussion? My only comment, and with respect, Supervisor Guild, if this was like a formal letter, I would definitely throw my signature on it. It being a memo, I don't know if I've ever seen an internal memo signed before. I think just to keep things consistent with it just being in this form right now, I think it's fine as is, as it's included in the packet. Is that okay?
Yep, okay. That is fine. Yeah, considering how it's drafted, I'm fine with forwarding it as in proposed in the packet.
Sure. I understand where you're coming from. Like I said, if it was letter format, I would be very, very willing to put my signature on it. It's just that at this time, to and from, I think it gets the idea of where this information is coming from, which is myself on behalf of everybody on this group. So thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Okay, motion's been made. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 5, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports and committee discussion. A, department updates, conservation planning and zoning, park, rec and forestry, and solid waste. CPZ 1, update on Fenwood Creek funding request. I think we just kind of had it, but what else do you got?
So this is Paul Daigle, County Conservationist, and yes, thank you for the action on the previous agenda item. And so that's one thing that we're looking for. I just also want to assure this committee that we're not considering a sole source of funding. I continue to reach out to state partners and Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection in the Wisconsin DNR to see if they have any ARPA funds that might be available for this, and also including the Lieutenant Governor, and also to seek if there's some just general state funding, and we'll continue to work with our local legislators as directed to see if that's a possibility. One small piece of good news is we did submit a special project to Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection for 2022 for the Fenwood, and we received $50,000. Now, this certainly isn't going to meet the goals that we're seeking through the Fenwood pilot project, but what that $50 is, it's like an innovation grant. So if there's any farmer or landowner out there that wants to try a new conservation practice on their land, anywhere from 10 to 40 acres, they would receive a $50 basically payment per acre to try some of the superior practices we're talking about. And the farmer would have to have a nutrient management plan and include that practice in their plan, and the phosphorus index would have to be below 3 to receive that for that year, but there's really no other strings attached. So if someone's interested and they want to reduce the risk a little bit, this would allow them to try it on anywhere from 10 to 40 acres. And so it's a good way to get your big toe in the water, I guess, if you're a farmer out there and want to try something new. The other thing, I've been in discussions with both our person in the office that provides our budget and the director, and that we would also submit the Fenwood for consideration and then general county budget if we're not successful anywhere else. And we'll be discussing that with the county administrator as well, that would be a special project type of thing. But again, we're trying to look everywhere that we can and leave no stone unturned looking for our #1 priority in the land and water plan. And that's all I have for this agenda item.
Okay, any other question or any questions under the Fenwood Creek funding request item? All right, let's move on then into 5A2, observations from Fenwood Farms during a recent storm.
So I'll ask Dominique to pull up a short video, 5 minutes. It's not professionally done. It's really to demonstrate some of the outcomes that we're shooting for on these superior farms, and an opportunity 2 weeks ago, I believe, as the tornado warning sirens were still blowing in Mosinee, we headed out to the Fenwood after about a 4-inch rain to observe some of the practices in place. And I just want to show what we found by just some simple sampling. If Dom, you can hit play on that.
Hi everyone, this is Paul Daigle. I'm the County Conservationist in Marathon County, and we had quite an exciting day around here yesterday. We had storms. Ripped through the area, dropping anywhere from 3 to 4 inches of rain, and we had an opportunity to run out into our pilot watershed project where we have some superior farming systems installed on some area farms, and we're able to grab some samples right off the fields as the runoff was coming off of them and visually see how our practices are working. We're out in the Fenwood watershed looking to check on the water quality immediately after a 3 to 4 inch storm had passed the area, and we're checking our superior farming systems. And on this farm, they're using managed perennial forages to promote soil health and feed their animals. And I'm going to take a sample of the water right now and just illustrate what you can see. All the standing water moving slowly through the field. And you can see very little sediment, a little bit of tannins, no turbidity, and we can test it for phosphorus, but I'd see likely very little phosphorus in the sample as well. We're going to go check a few more superior farming systems out as well, along with some other cropping systems. At a farm that's using no-till cover crops and longer perennial rotations, and he's part of our incentive program to provide incentives to superior farming systems. We're able to sample the road ditch right here, and all this runoff is coming right off of the field that we're working on this farm. And I'll take a sample of that. As you can see, we have pretty, from a visual standpoint, pretty good water quality here. Very low turbidity. We'll take a sample for the phosphorus and see where we're at with that, but looks like the systems are working. So we're at another one of our cooperating farmers in the Fenwood, and this entire watershed is in soybean this year, but they used no-till. They had cover crops last year, high residual. They maintain all of the grass waterways, and as you can see, the sample for this farm is quite high quality water yet, very low turbidity. We'll find out what the phosphorus looks like, but this is really what we're shooting for, superior farming systems again. We're grabbing our last sample here, and this is coming off of a conventionally tilled cornfield in the Fenwood. And you can see quite a bit more turbidity and sediment coming out of that field. It's the storm has passed a little bit ago, so things are settling down a bit already. But we suspect this is going to have quite a bit more sediment and phosphorus in it as we sample it. All right, so we're going to take a look at some of the samples we grabbed yesterday and just kind of take a comparison look through the different samples we took. This is the first one we took off of that managed perennial forage, and this farmer had the option of rotationally grazing it. He also direct cuts and feeds right in his freeze stall for supplemental feed, and he also takes this feed for winter feed. And you can see there's really no sediment visually in there at all, but we do have some tannins that we picked up, and actually in these type of situations we want tannins, because if they're going to graze them, those tannins exist in the legumes and the herbaceous plants that are in that sward, and they help reduce bloat and parasite loads. Our second site, which really looks nice as well, this is our no-till. We're coming off that cornfield and a little bit of legume, and it was direct seeded right into that alfalfa field, and there's interseeded cover crops in there as well, but really very low turbidity in there. And then our third site was our no-till soybeans, and those were no-tilled into a cover crop from last year, and really a nice site as well. Pretty large watershed for soybeans, but again, really very little turbidity. And this is our last sample that we took where the conventionally tilled corn was, and you can see some of the sediment in there now. It's settled out, but we definitely have high sediment loads, and if we were to sample this, we'd expect to see quite a bit of phosphorus attached to that sediment as well. And so visually speaking, this is really kind of some observations of our superior farming practices that we had in place on a conventionally tilled practice, probably meeting tolerable soil loss, but really not meeting those water quality objectives that we want to achieve. But our soil health practices appear to be working from the outset. Just as a wrap up, I just hope you enjoyed what we captured yesterday and shared with you today as well as a wrap up. And it's nice to see that these practices, at least visually, appear to be functioning out in the watershed, and we hope to get a lot more of this installed in the Fenwood Creek. Thanks.
So we're going to post that video on the EPIC Facebook page, and we've done a lot of short videos. Matt Omick, an agronomist, posts quite a few too. But this is really what we're shooting for, and what you folks saw about a year ago when we went out to UW Marshfield. But again, we were able to get 1,500 acres using our MDV funds and providing those incentives, and now we want to expand that out by tenfold in that watershed and see if we can have a cumulative impact. But I thought this would give you a nice little snapshot of that. And any questions at all?
My only comment is that when you took the first sample and you were holding that water bottle in your hand, I honestly thought you were going to take a drink out of it.
I almost wanted to.
It did look very clear, to be very fair. No, that's very cool. It's good engagement too, I think, from the public when they see the work that's being done there and seeing the impact of those best practices, to see that visually from one area, which is almost clear water to the other where you actually see the sediment in that bottle moving around. So that's great. That's great work. Any other Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, did you take a phosphorus level on those at all?
I still have the samples, and I chose not to just because I didn't feel it was a scientific sampling. This is really an observation, and I don't want to try to spin it anything other than that, because I think we would, I think we'd be criticized if we try to use that and someone ran with that data.
Supervisor Draybeck.
Thank you.
You see where it says mute?
I think I got it now. Is it working?
I don't think so.
Oh, I think it is. I don't, sounds
Tap
like
it. Tap it once. Oh, yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot my question. Were these samples taken basically on the same amount of runoff as far as like the hills and stuff like that? I mean, I know some would be more level, not, you can't get it just perfect, but was it similar areas where they would, I mean, even with the last sample, were they similar as far as that?
Yeah, most of the first 3 samples were taken on about 3 to 4% slope. That last sample was much less slope, and also the rain had quite an opportunity to already run off or soak in. It was kind of on the tail end of that, and it was only just a couple acres that drained into that road ditch there. We were kind of wanted to make sure it was just from that single field, and so it actually, appeared the most turbid, but actually had the lowest slope.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. That was excellent. Okay. 5A3, updates on animal waste and nutrient management ordinance.
I just wanted to give the committee a quick update that my intent I know we did a lot of work on the animal waste ordinance about 1.5 years ago, right when COVID hit, if you recall. Is prior to that we had that, but in some recent grant applications and working with local DNR, we thought we had our ordinance where they would like to see it, and working with them because there's points gained if you have the egg performance standards and prohibition codified at the county level. And not that we would have been successful with the Fenwood, but it would have given us some more points, and I'm anticipating next year we move up a little bit and still get some money for farmstead practices, regardless if we get these incentive payment practices. But what the DNR at the state level would like to see is we tried to make our ordinance very efficient and easier for anyone to pick up and understand, and we left a few of the specific performance standards off because they're repetitive. One would be tolerable soil loss, and that's a standalone performance standard, but it's also included in nutrient management plan. If you have a nutrient management plan, you have to meet the tolerable soil loss, so we thought we had that covered just fine. They would like to see us have that as a separate practice. In addition, the phosphorus index of 6 is a statewide performance standards. It's also included in nutrient management standard, and we thought we had that covered, and I think we do, but they would like to see us pull that out and have that. The third one would be processed wastewater, which we have covered under our animal waste runoff performance standard, and also in our animal waste, or it's defined in the animal waste as animal waste. So we have that like runoff from a leachate pile or any type of processed wastewater out of a milk house or something like that. That's also a standalone performance standard. So we'd include them and break them out. This would be, I would think, more of a minor revision, but I would still, and I'm hoping to bring it to committee in December, but I am going to get the changes that we're considering, and I would like it to bring them to some of the farm groups in the county and see if they consider them minor as well. And if not, we'll have to do a little more robust engagement strategy. But if they seem to agree with what we're proposing. I would ask the committee that we not have as robust engagement as we did the first time we went around, just because I really feel those practices are in there. The only new one would be a 5-foot tillage setback from perennial streams. And I don't believe that's an issue because the streams in Marathon County are so rocky and so wet. I've never seen tillage 5 feet from a perennial stream. And I just want to give you a heads up this early, so I'm going to be working on that as we get into the fall. But I would like to hear any concerns or comments you might have at this point so that we can preempt any discussions in October or November that might be considered surprises.
Any comments from the committee?
Supervisor Conway?
Go ahead, Supervisor Conway.
I was just wondering how when we redid it last year, how that was received by the ag community. Did they have a lot of complaints or compliments or anything?
As you recall from the public hearings, we had I believe it was 17 letters of support from a wide array of community groups and individuals, including farmers. We did have one letter of concern when the ordinance went to county board, and we took that into consideration and had that moved back to committee. We re-engaged with that group and came back with maybe some minor changes, I believe. And then in June of 2020, the ordinance passed. I am not aware of any complaints since then of anything that we put in there. And that might help when we re-engage these groups as well.
Any other comments from any other comments from the committee? So I think that the way that staff is approaching this right now is absolutely 100% the correct way to do it. And I mean, going and getting engaged with these groups and providing them with that information is great. I think that what happened last time, yes, it did create an extra step during the process, but I think that we as a organization benefited from it because it showed that we were willing to work with every single stakeholder out there, and also showed that we care about every single concern that anybody has with the animal waste ordinance. So but with respect to staff, like I said, it added another step, and it's something that we should definitely work to avoid this time around. So being proactive and going to get engaged in the community, that's excellent. And I don't know any other way to be more transparent than that. So those are my thoughts. Comments? Anything else from the committee? All right, thank you. All right, let's see here. We have 5A4. UW Discovery Farms Edge of Field Monitoring Sites coming to Marathon County.
So this is Paul again, and I believe this is some exciting news and news you might be interested in as well. And if you recall, in the spring, I worked with the UW Marshfield Lake Research Station, UW Discovery Farms, and they were applying for a grant to fund 3 potential sites in Marathon County for discovery farms. That grant was unsuccessful, but really what I was unaware of, as well as UW Discovery Farms, is they were given a boost in the state budget, and all of a sudden we have money to install 2 edge of field monitoring stations in Marathon County. And I've been meeting with those same folks for about a month now, on and off, and we have one farm that is using the best management practices we just saw with the no-till and cover crops on a wide scale. Mill Trim Dairy volunteered to Discovery Farms to be a host site over a year ago, and there's a small watershed that's going to be monitored for 5 to 7 years on their farm. And in addition, we on last week, we toured 3 potential grazing sites for monitoring, and we're in discussions and narrowing that down to one single farm. By the middle of September, the weirs will be installed already, and October 1st, their water year starts, because they kind of sync that with the cropping year. So we'll actually be starting to monitor water quality on the practices we've been talking about. And they really need more data on these types of systems, because they have, I forget how many years of cumulative data on some of the conventional cropping systems and stuff. They don't really feel they need to pick a site like that, and because they have so much data, but they really want to get this specific data to see if these practices are performing the way they hope they would perform, and are answers out there for water quality. And so it's pretty exciting. And again, those should be operational by October 1st if everything goes well.
Questions, comments from the committee? Okay, thank you, Paul. Progress on conservation-related university projects.
So I know Lori is preparing to give you a presentation, or at least an update, probably within the next month, on some of the ones that they're working on with planning and zoning. But related to conservation, I put this in here because I guess we got a lot of other items that we're updating as well. But I just wanted to let you know that, you folks were gracious enough to put in your budget last year, I believe it was $100,000 for these university projects, and they're all over departments in Marathon County. And we've been engaging, quietly on the side, but with the university on several of the ones that we submitted through CPZ, and making progress on them. And one is, I think we don't really have a lot of in-house expertise on preparing a groundwater plan, especially some of the in-detail maps that they have. So we're working with, over the summer, we had a graduate level class from UW-Madison prepare 2 maps, and that might not sound like much, but until you figure out all the data that went in there based on, one is a yield map, and the other one is a nitrate map of the county on various nitrate levels. Let me just check my notes here. So the other one that we just started this fall now is, if you remember from our land and water plan on public engagement, where do people, especially different groups of people, get their information? Who do they trust? All those different variables, and how do they want to engage? How do they want to be engaged with all the different things out there? Social media, do they want Paul on Snapchat, or what do they want these days, or Facebook or Twitter, or where do, and it'll probably be multiple sources, but really just start finding out how the citizens of Marathon County want to be engaged by county staff. So that's one survey that they're going to possibly produce for us. And then another one is right in the Fenwood, to specifically look at landowners and farmers, and that may own land or rent farm, and then attitudes of the farmers. Do they know about the performance standards practices? What have they heard about EPIC? Some of the engagement stuff we've already done, what level are they at? So when we start approaching them, we know if we start at 101, or if we start at a higher level of engagement with those folks. And again, also find out which ways they would prefer to receive their communication. So those will move forward in the fall, and that we're expecting to hear from one more class on a groundwater plan activity as well, and that they're going to pick up kind of the next step on that.
Very good. Other questions, comments? So those projects themselves were just in conservation, right? So it did impact planning. Okay, so there are other projects within planning and zoning as well?
Yes, sir, and I can't even recall them. Maybe Lori remembers.
Well, I don't remember by department, but across the county, there's 34 projects on the list now that the university is looking to.
For $100,000?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, and 27 of them have been matched with classes, and 7 are still tentative matches.
Sure.
So, but that's countywide. So.
Okay.
I think it's a very good investment of county resources, because we get students with master's level education doing research for us and putting these maps together, and it would take in-house, it would take hours and hours of time for a single person to do that. And so we're getting all their labor for free. We spend time, geez, Jeff and I, we really like to touch base probably once a week with that class, even if it's for 5 minutes. Hey, what questions do you have? We want to make sure we get the outcome we want. If we just left them wander for 16 weeks during a semester, they might get the outcome they want, an A on their report or whatever, but we may not have a map that we can use in our plan. So we would rather just touch base frequently and get the outcome we want too. So we're really staying with them.
Yeah, very cool. Other questions?
Chairman, laying a hand, this is Marilyn Band.
Sure, go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay, there is something that the professional dairy producers are putting on the 21st of September on a Tuesday, and they're going to be going to Mill Trim Farms, where they're going to do share their systems they've established to mitigate the region's historical poor water quality. So that's on the 21st of September at Mill Trim Farms, and then they go to Ross, Jensen, and Edgar, and then they end up over to Bull Farms Brewery in Wausau. That's on the 21st of September. And so Mill Trim Farms is going to be a host for that, the first stop, and that is on the 21st of September, and it's through the professional dairy producers that you need to register for that.
Sure, thank you, Marilyn. I'll make a note of that as an upcoming event. Any other questions? All right, then we are down to 5A6, future education sessions.
I guess I'm just seeking the committee's approval to start bringing some of the work we've been doing to you on a little more regular basis when we see a less populated rezoning agenda. Can we say it that way? So, but we would work with Dom to see if, hey, if we think there's going to be one that's going to take 45, 50, 60 minutes, we would probably pull that agenda item, an education item. But when we get a day like today, it would be nice to have 15 to 20 minutes. The first one I'm thinking of is all the work we've been doing with our on the lakes and the Eastern Lakes project regards to aquatic invasives, and also a new arrangement we have with Golden Sands to continue that work, and some of the work that Jared Mader's also doing on shoreline restoration, and the previous technicians in that position. We've got about an 8-year track record, and I don't believe this committee's ever heard any of the progress we've made on some of that stuff. But that would be the first one. But I'm sure Lori would like to open up that to all education stuff within CPZ, that we start bringing a little in. I know we kept things shorter when we're all on video. Those are hard meetings, but if we're a little more open, that we have an opportunity, we can do some of that work.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. When you look at, and I think you hit it on the head, which is that if you have an agenda with 7 rezones, obviously that's going to take a little bit more time, or a hefty policy item, something like that. But you're correct. If there's a way that you can do 15 to 20 minutes of education on a particular topic, that grows the knowledge of this group. I certainly don't see any issue with that at all. So, other comments from the group? Questions? All right. Well, thank you, staff, for the updates. Let's go 6, policy issues, discussion and committee determination for the county board for its consideration. We have none. 7, next meeting date, October 5th, 2021, 3 p.m., assembly room, and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I guess have it recorded in the minutes that I'd like to thank Supervisor Pfeifrick for his years of service on this group, on the ARC. He brought a very valuable perspective to this group and his work in zoning and planning, and we really appreciate the work that he's done with us. So, Randy, wherever you are, thank you, and I wish you well with whatever you're doing next. Other announcements, requests, correspondence. Dominic, what you got?
Yeah. So this should be brief. I just wanted to let the committee and make you aware that we did receive a petition to rezone the zoning ordinance from a town. So I'll be meeting with that town to kind of identify exactly what language they would like, but that will likely come before the ERC prior to our regular annual revisions.
All right, thank you, Dom. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are down to item number 8. I'd entertain a motion. Motion by Supervisor Drapeck. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Seefeld. Any further discussion? How am I doing? It's a non-debatable item. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh,